Today we are ranking the Elden Ring Legacy Dungeons. No need for a long intro. Let's get started with dead last, the Lake of Rot. The Lake of Rot is everything wrong with our Lord and Savior Miyazaki's brain when it comes to poison swamps, but on methamphetamine. It obviously comes across as lazy, but I think the worst part is it goes against everything Elden Ring did so well. When I first find a new area in Elden Ring, I want to explore every part of it, but the Scarlet Rot has me running through it not only just for survival, but to get this awful minor legacy dungeon over with. And a special fuck you to the Dragonkin soldier, who is otherwise a pretty fun mini-boss. The one saving grace of the Lake of Rot is it can be ran through very quickly, but that won't save it from a last place ranking. Midra's Mance has one job, and that's to build tension for Midra's fight. It certainly does a good job of that. This burning cathedral is so damn scary. It's a mostly straightforward path to the boss that truthfully is only on this list because I know people would be wondering where it would rank if it was left off of it. It's just not much to go off of here. Shout out that Horned Warrior though in the beginning. He beat my ass quite a bit. So it doesn't even really feel like a legacy dungeon, more so just a build up to Midra, but because it has to be on the list, I'll put it just above the Lake of Rot. The Shunning Grounds are next, and I may be in the minority on this one, but I just do not like this place. Unlike the Lake of Rot, I can appreciate the effort that went into the Shunning Grounds, but that doesn't make it any more fun to go through. I do enjoy fighting omens. The rest of the enemies, though, aren't fun at all, and the platforming section at the very end is pure torture. This is the legacy dungeon I've played the least. I don't really come here unless I'm doing a Frenzied Flame ending. Getting lost here can be a nightmare for new players, and I just don't like it. If you do, that's fine, but so-called objective rankings are for cowards, and I don't like the Shunning Ground. Redmane Castle is extremely disappointing. Bosses are not a part of this ranking, so take out Radahn and the Festival of War, and you're left with barely anything. The best part is the entrance where you ride on horseback through catapult fire. Going around the outside is unique, I guess, but once you're inside, there's just so little to this minor legacy dungeon that the only reason it's considered one is for its lore significance. But in this case, that actually works against it, because the place is the home of the mightiest of the demigods, the biggest Chad in Elden Ring lore, Star Scourge Radahn, and you just give him a big room with a bunch of flamethrowers, and upstairs up a ladder, and then a bunch of lions. I mean, that's just not enough. One of the biggest missed opportunities in the entire game, and definitely this list. Miyazaki, you goddamn troll. Another poison swamp. You know when your sibling has a really annoying joke they are bothering you with? They will not stop doing it. They're just relentless. Eventually, the joke isn't funny so much as the fact that they won't stop giving up on it. They're so unbelievably committed to the bit that you can't help but laugh. Miyazaki is obsessed with poison swamps, and he even said before the game came out that he can't help it. Bro knows we hate them, and he just does it anyway. When you find the Shaded Castle, you're at the point you've seen so many poison swamps you can't help but laugh. By the next poison swamp, you're back to wanting fromsoftware's entire staff tarred and feathered. Outside of that, it's another linear path to the boss, with the exception being the Clean Rot Knights guarding key items for Millicent's quest. It's alright. Everything going forward, though, is at least pretty good in some ways. Mohgwyn Palace isn't bad. It's okay. But that's the issue. This is like my issue with Redmane Castle. It should be way more than just passable. These are significant locations with demigods at the end of them, so I feel like there was a huge missed opportunity to not flesh out Mohgwyn Palace more. This place is amazing visually. They cooked unbelievably hard, but there's not much to do besides another linear path of the boss. There's some cool enemies here like the Sanguine Nobles and the goofy-ass Albinaurics, but it doesn't have a lot to it otherwise. Listen, Elden Ring is the best game ever made in my opinion. If I sound negative, I do apologize. But I just think more effort should have gone into some of these places, even if that effort that went into developing this more came at the cost of dungeons or caves scattered throughout the open world. But I'm not an expert or anything. The first of our areas from the fantastic Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, Castle Entis is essentially a linear path to Relina. It does that job well, and a lot of the enemies here are extremely fun to fight, like the Black Knights, and I do have a soft spot for the Sorcerers. It would rank much higher if it wasn't for the fact Academy of Raya Lucaria is the thing. Castle Entis goes for the whole Wizard of Magic theme just like Raya Lucaria, even down to the enemies and having another moon-grown NPC fight. Unfortunately though, there's a lot less to find here than all the crazy hidden parts the Academy has. Maybe it's just me, but because it takes so much from another much better dungeon, that's going to cost it some points here. Good overall though, and a good experience. When I think of Limgrave, I think of the Weeping Peninsula and Castle Morn. It feels strange to say out loud, but I get nostalgic for this area. It's only a 2-year-old game, but it really brings me back to when everybody was playing this at the same exact time. That nostalgia can be a bit blinding though, because the area felt so much larger on the first playthrough. But every time I go through it again, I realize there wasn't that much to it, and it was more straightforward than I thought initially. It's not bad by any means, but on subsequent playthroughs it does lose some of its luster. It's the first minor legacy dungeon most players will find, and it's a good one. The stone coffin fissure is found in the Cerulean coast. After dropping into a hole, you'll find this whole minor legacy dungeon inside. Elden Ring seriously has the best natural exploration in any open world game I've ever played. The fissure boils down to a linear path to the end where you'll fight the putrescent knight and find St. Trina. I don't necessarily dislike when the dungeons are a straight path, and I thought descending further and further down was a great idea. What drove me absolutely insane, however, was the laser beams from those beat enemies. They made me just want to run past everything in the dungeon instead of taking my time and fighting the enemies, and I hate that. It's especially maddening on my New Game Plus 7 file when everything is just hitting so hard already. But overall, descending further and further into the fissure feels very ominous and an overarching sense of dread, similar to Dark Souls 1's entire world design, come to think of it. We only have one more minor legacy dungeon to go before we have the big ones, so let's get on to Caria Manor. Caria Manor is definitely the best of the minor legacy dungeons. I like the enemies you find here, such as the finger crawler enemies. They're just so creepy. There's a lot more exploration to be done here than most of the other minor ones. Think, for example, finding the Sword of Night and Flame. And the real shock is finding Ranni the Witch at the end and coming to realize how significant this place is. You just accidentally stumbled into a demigod and the most important character in the game's lore. The whole dungeon was good, but that shock is enough to put Caria Manor so high. And besides, I hold myself to a set of rules as an Elden Ring content creator. A lot of other content creators do as well. If you're curious what I mean, search Rule 34 Ranni to find out more. So now as we get into the major legacy dungeons, the main ones, all of these are great. Volcano Manor is last, but that doesn't make it bad by any means. Let's take a moment to appreciate how cool it is they pulled off this mansion in a volcano. Good stuff. The beginning is extremely eerie. Meeting all of the NPCs in the drawing room just gave this uneasy feeling to it. And finding the legacy dungeon itself is like uncovering a dark secret, even though you see it coming a mile away. My favorite part of Volcano Manor is actually the enemy variety here. There's a lot of good ones like the Omen Killer, plenty of manservants, and I do enjoy the Fire Monks as well. The aesthetic is great and unique, and the enemies are fun, all while having the length of a true legacy dungeon. Bellirat Settlement is the first legacy dungeon found in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. The Black Ale Knight let us know right away that fromsoftware was not going to be holding back with its difficulty and its bosses, but Bellirat Settlement made it abundantly clear the legacy dungeons were not going to be any different. I gave Volcano Manor credit for having fun enemies, and I could say the same thing about Bellirat Settlement. When the DLC first dropped, I hated the Horn Warriors' Infinity Poise, but I've come to enjoy fighting them a lot. Same goes for those scary dancers. Although I do have a skill issue, I like the challenge of them. Bellirat's also got this cool thing going for it where it's a town and not a dungeon or castle like we're used to with our dungeons. So Bellirat starts Shadow of the Erdtree on a very high note. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is a legacy dungeon I think I've always been a bit higher on than most people. A lot of that comes down to my first playthrough of it, because unlike one we'll be seeing in a bit, I found pretty much everything in it on my first playthrough. There's a lot of hidden stuff with the rooftop section and the elevator part leading downwards to the abductor versions. Also, I'm really thankful for this place letting me relive my prime as a middle school bully. Massacring magic-wielding virgins as a strength build gives me the joy of shoving a nerd in a locker all over again. The Academy of Raya Lucaria definitely rewards exploration, and I appreciate that about it. Farum Azula is the final mandatory area of the game. It's great, and thank God, because the mountaintop of the giants was a huge disappointment. Farum Azula just looks sensational. The dragons and storms you can see in the distance are just amazing. The ancient dragons aren't great, but fighting your way through the other enemies is fantastic, and while bosses don't count in the ranking, the hidden path to finding Placiduous Sax does. What a great way to reward exploration. This is a really great area. The only thing I wouldn't say is ideal about it is it's got a big spike in difficulty, much like the Halig Tree. The Halig Tree is just absolutely gorgeous, and the place is huge. And out of the entire thing, the only part I would say is outright bad is the very, very beginning when you're traversing the roots and the ants can knock you off, which will drive me up a wall. That first area is very fun, but I mostly love everything after Royal Knight Loretta, and that's what I mostly picture when I think of the Halig Tree. Much like I said earlier with the fissure, descending downwards gives you this sense of dread, but also wonder. Even if you somehow by now had no idea Malenia was going to be at the bottom, you just know something special is at the bottom. Great enemies, lore significance, huge size, and a beautiful look. What is not to like here? Number 4 is Enter a Limb. Enter a Limb is a legacy dungeon I think I like a lot more than most people do. For one, the place is just, look at this. This is sensational. It's just so gorgeous. It's beautiful. I can't believe they cooked this hard. Enter a Limb is one of the best hidden parts to it as well. While most of the dungeon is linear, reaching Euphoria is such a thrill, and it's a journey and a half. Reaching it makes it feel like you completed a side quest without ever speaking to an NPC. It's just a magical feeling. And this place is very lore significant as it's where Marika reached godhood and massacred the Hornsent. And of course, needless to say, this is the final area of Elden Ring, so enjoy it while it lasts, Tarnished. And now we've made it to the final 3, and these are the ones I consider S tier. But before we continue, I would like to ask that if you've made it this far, please consider liking the video. It helps small YouTubers out like me a ton, and subscribing for future content. Either way, it may be surprising to see our first true legacy dungeon near the top of the list, Stormveil Castle. It's not the most challenging area, but it's no less remarkable. I don't think it was lost on them that they had to knock the first legacy dungeon out of the park for fans of their previous games to get really hooked. Because by the time I got to Stormveil Castle, I knew Elden Ring was cooking with its open world exploration, but after finishing it, I realized they put just as much to their more traditional dungeons that we're more used to. Stormveil is gigantic. On my first playthrough, I felt accomplished finding the claw talisman on the rooftops. I was ready to brag to my other internet friends only to be roasted and laughed at in a Discord call where I found out just how much I missed. The Crucible Knight for one, and then the other area I'm glad they told me about where you would fight what may as well have been a whole-ass boss in that ulcerated tree spirit. And there's a pretty significant lore location here that opens up to Rogier's quest. Finding out how much I missed after already spending a lot of time at Stormveil Castle blew my mind. Are you kidding me? There's at least 2 other areas I have to find? Maybe more? The enemies are great besides the sword feet birds. The Banished Knights are really awesome in particular. I find them very fun to fight, and I absolutely love the Exile Knights design. Their attacks were sick, and fighting groups of them never really got old to me, even as I play this game back on new playthroughs. There is a subtle stroke of genius I want to mention that I don't really ever see talked about, and that's when you go up to Gostok the Gatekeeper. He tells the player not to take the main gate, and after heeding his advice and going through the outside of the castle instead of directly through it, it makes it feel as if you're sneaking in and through a heavily guarded fortress without the need of an annoying stealth mechanic. I can't think of a single complaint I have about it besides maybe the difficulty, but even that's not really realistic for the first major legacy dungeon. It's truly just a 10 out of 10. And if this was the best dungeon, I'd be pretty happy about that. It only falls to number 3 because of how spectacular our last 2 are. Number 2 is the Shadowkeep, and it's amazing. The Shadowkeep is massive. So massive that on replays I get overwhelmed even thinking about it, and the path to Mesmer is a journey. It is very long though, so buckle up. Shadowkeep does a lot of things that the DLC as a whole does right. First off is the verticality. Not even sure I knew that word existed until Shadow of the Erdtree came out and people were talking about it, but it is true. It's a lot of what made the open world work so well, and in this Legacy Dungeon, it was also used masterfully. The enemies are very difficult, but personally, I thought the Fire Knights were really just a blast to go up against a lot of times. Usually they were by themselves too, and that meant there was no unfair ganks to deal with. I think every region connecting through the Shadowkeep is such a unique idea, and I love that they did that. And every questline and NPC meets here, awesome. Just great stuff. I'm just so excited to see what fromsoftware does next if they continue to make areas like this. But of course, Leyndell comes in at number 1, the Royal Capital, and this is my favorite level in any video game. I just think it's worth all the hype it gets. Turning the corner and seeing how beautiful the city is takes me back to the Dark Souls 3 Ring City DLC. The view of the Ring City was gorgeous, even though you knew you wouldn't reach all of it. Here, though, that is not the case. After a bit, you'll realize that you can go to every single part of this magnificent-looking city. The amount of things you can explore here is just outrageous. We fought tooth and nail to get to Leyndell, and Melna had been hyping it up since day 1, and it somehow managed to live up to all of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one, and check out a video on the screen now.